Ladies and gentlemen, the Chasm. The wait is finally over, and honestly, it took quite a moment for me to settle in how long it has been. 553 days. As of today. That's how long ago it was since Genshin Impact was first released, and with it, the Chasm. And by that, I mean the name Chasm floating in an empty void, just like Dragonspine. I think. Times certainly were different. The map was way smaller. This big hole that eventually became Dragonspine was a giant inaccessible eyesore to look at.
What is that?
We were capped at 120 resin. Why? But most importantly for this video, the Chasm was not physically there. What a surprise. Before being released, players could see a scarecrow and a dendro slime just chilling there. No idea why, maybe they just thought it was funny. From what I could gather, the first direct mention of the Chasm in-game was in 1.2, in a dialogue from a character named Esther, a researcher in Dragonspine. She's a geographer and environmentalist and likens the Chasm to Dragonspine in the sense that they are both completely distinct from the rest of the regions they are in respectively. Additionally, another early bit of knowledge regarding the Chasm appears in the 6th volume of the Records of Jueyun, released in version 1.3. It talks about the formation of the Chasm, in which a giant jade star fell from the skies and landed northwest of Lisha, around 6,000 years ago, long before the fall of Kyanria, the Archon War, and other important events. This same jade star also resulted in the creation of the nearby area Dunyu ruins, which, along with the Chasm, were the two areas which were the most affected by the cataclysm. Curiously, prior to the creation of the Chasm, the area appeared to be that of an ocean, due to various perfectly preserved marine fossils found in the mines. After countless wars and seemingly endless conflict, including a possible war between Morax and Ashtaha given that the latter resided in the Chasm, this jade star returned to the skies somehow, leaving a giant hole in its wake, which humans then used to reach the underground layers of Liyue and further spring their mining operations, sustaining the mineral economy in Liyue for hundreds of years and cementing the Chasm as the richest ore source in the nation, even if it is quite a dangerous place to navigate through. Shortly before the arrival of the Traveler though, a series of mysterious accidents led the entire mining facility and the location to be closed, putting its workers out of a job for the time being despite the wealth it generates to Liyue.
It's not a liquid!
The Fatui, with Signora's help prior to the events of Child wanting to murder an entire nation's worth of people, and obviously before Signora getting the boot, were sent out to the Chasm to help take care of the situation. There, they found a sort of black ooze, which we'll learn more about later, had begun to infest the mines, which the Fatui tried and ultimately failed to deal with. But enough about lore, that's boring. I wouldn't want to make hour-long videos around those. I'm not a historian. What matters is that the Chasm is out now, and you, yes, you, can access and explore the upper and bottom layers of the Chasm. Entering the Chasm isn't as hard as you would expect. Previously, you weren't allowed entrance overall because, duh, it wasn't released. But now you're basically invited to explore the place because guess what? You're the Traveler, meaning you have to do everything for everyone else. The cool thing is you can explore it at any rank, the upper portions at least. Visually, the Chasm is absolutely stunning. There's nothing to complain here. There's this red-orange coloring not seen anywhere else in Liyue, giving that is a direct causation of the previously mentioned star which fell there. The trees resemble the maple trees found in Azuma, at least in color, and the ground resembles that of a very arid area, where the usually green and yellow biomes of Liyue give space to less grass and more bushes, stone, sand, and dust. The surrounding cliffs have a very distinct revolving pattern previously unseen, further adding to the uniqueness of the place, and also due to the meteorite, unique fluorescent plants and beings like starshrooms and luck-like flies have thrived inside the lower levels. Mining machinery is all around the place, mine carts, platforms, storage houses, elevators, and everything in between. There's also these intractable geopillars which, when hit with blunt force on claymores or geoconstructs like Zhongli's Stele, Ningguang's Jade Screen, or the Traveler's thing, will release a resonance quake. Additionally, these geoconstructs will also release a resonance quake of their own when another comes into contact. This doesn't serve any purpose apart from puzzle solving, but they do deal a ton of damage to surrounding enemies, usually being enough for a one-shot. usually. It's also interesting to mention that these are relics from an ancient battle Morax had during the Archon War, similar to the stone spears seen in the Sea of Clouds. Speaking of the Archon War, this place is like a giant memorial to that time. North of the chasm, the player can spot a huge ravine or path of sorts, with stones spiking out of both sides. This is where Morax supposedly forcefully dragged Ajdahab during their conflict, which, thinking about it, really does sound funny. There's also direct relics of that time from unknown characters other than Morax, which are revealed in a world quest where you have to retrieve 6 of them. During the first moments after the Abyss invaded the chasm, Morax sent out the Millelith to fight and defend the location. Knowing this, an unnamed, previously retired Yaksha who fought under Morax's command sprung into action, helping Liyue defend against the outside forces. Eventually though, this vanguard perished in battle. However, we don't know if the Yaksha really is dead or not due to a Fatui guard stating that the battle of 500 years ago is still being fought beneath our feet. Maybe this could be the missing Yaksha we've known about for a while. And can we just take a moment to appreciate the music? I didn't know where to put this, but as usual, a fantastic job was done with the OST. I have yet to see a moment where Hoyomix and Yu Peng Chen miss on something, and I probably will not be alive by the time when that does happen, because it will never happen. These people have produced what is to me the only perfect part of this game. People don't talk about the music of Genshin Impact nearly as enough as they should, and that's a huge shame. Okay, right, but you might be looking at everything right here and saying, wow, that's underwhelming to say the least, and truth be told, I also thought that.
That's it?
But as I stated before, this is not everything the chasm has to offer. Descending into the actual mining areas of the chasm reveals where most of the effort in the location actually went. Spoiler alert, but 95% of the main quest will take place down here. As you delve lower into the Y coordinates, the mining facility turns from a simple circle with elevated cliffs to a giant maze, which not shocking really, considering it's a cave system, what a surprise, and not the entrance to a pristinely kept modern mega city. I'm gonna talk more in depth about this in due time, but the set pieces for this sub area are in a whole different level than the rest of the game. Get it? Because we're underground? And by that I mean, there's some of the most creative, otherworldly locations we've seen so far in game. Clearly, as we'll see, areas which have been influenced by supernatural forces or energies are abundant in this area, which helps turn the chasm into a proper explorable location instead of what could possibly have been a boring 4-hour-long ride through a series of grey tunnels. I'm going to use mostly 2 other areas in the game for comparison when talking about the chasm, Dragonspine and Enkanomiya. I'm not using the archipelago because that was limited time. Getting this out of the way as soon as I can. I think the chasm is a huge improvement from Dragonspine and specifically Enkanomiya, and if you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll maybe understand why. Please don't get me wrong, I love Dragonspine just as much as everyone else, and I can even glance over the frostbite mechanics because honestly, I think I only died to it once specifically, and that was to get an achievement. The devs made sure to fill the entire place with lightable torches, campfires, warming Sealy, and those heating mechanisms, and if you don't have a pyro character in your party, then honestly you're playing the game wrong because you should always have Bennett. I also like the sub-areas and set pieces in Dragonspine. Wormrest Valley specifically is my favorite because it really puts into perspective how absolutely massive During was when he crashed into the mountain. What I can't glance over though, and it's something which doesn't happen in the chasm, is how similar everything looks in Dragonspine. Contradicting, right? I just said I like the set pieces, but please hear me out. Wherever you go, there's this mix of whites and blues, which of course is mostly due to the theme of Dragonspine. The entire mountain is kinda cursed to have perpetual winter storms year round because of the Skyfrost nail, and I can understand that. Still, if you haven't played since the absolute beginning like I have, it's really easy to feel not like you're lost, but like you're always in the same place. What I'm trying to get at is, you can definitely add variety to a place and its set pieces without interfering in its major theme. Now look at the chasm. Apart from the obvious difference of having two different levels in the area, which in itself already puts the chasm ahead of the two previously mentioned areas for me, it is much more creatively rich than any area previous to it apart from maybe the islands of Inazuma. You can really notice how miHoYo's team evolved throughout the years by just looking at the major points of interest in both of these locations, Dragonspine and the chasm, and seeing how much more enticing the latter is in comparison to the former. The chasm also borrows a page from the Crimson Agates in Dragonspine with its Lumen Spar. It can be used in exchange for rewards and to upgrade a certain gadget basically required for exploration. Now, Enkanomiya is much more, I think, complicated to find it. Apart from the lore, which as per usual I have no complaints about, I think Enkanomiya is a prime example of what not to do in a sub-area and how the chasm takes those negative elements and twists them into something greater. Starting off, one of my main complaints about Enkanomiya was its verticality and how there were mostly no dedicated structures to get up apart from climbing. But you might be thinking, Maple, take a look at the chasm and then at Enkanomiya and then at your own face. One is clearly more vertical in nature than the other, and yes, you would be correct. But the way the chasm fixes this verticality issue, even if it's way taller than Enkanomiya, is so simple yet so effective that it makes you wonder why it was never added in Enkanomiya. This is the solution. It's a platform that, when you stand on it, makes you jump higher. Nothing major, nothing gimmicky, just a platform that makes you jump higher. And by God, it works! Speaking of gimmicks, White Knight and Evernight. Look, I wouldn't have an issue with these two if it wasn't for this cutscene, which you are obligated to watch whenever you change from day to night and vice versa. Maybe it's to lock you in so you can't exploit puzzles or accidentally trap yourself, but I would absolutely be lying if I said it's not annoying. The main point of Evernight and White Knight was, apart from being lore accurate, for completing challenges like mazes and to change the physical properties of these things right here. And it made sense in the context of Enkanomiya only, hence why the chasm obviously doesn't have it. What the chasm does though is give you what is called a Luminstone Adjuvant. The lower levels of the chasm are dark, and to counter that, while simultaneously adding to the puzzles, you can use this gadget to provide illumination whenever it contains energy, as well as unlock chests, challenges, and destroy hazards. If you don't have any energy though, you need to find one of the various ways to replenish it, including a new type of Sealy, which are so easy to come by it's almost laughable. At the risk of sounding like a giant reach, I think this serves as a replacement for Evernight and White Knight in the sense that it's made for puzzles, it's not annoying to use, it doesn't ruin the pace of exploration, and it provides a challenge, even if a minor one, in not losing all your energy and having to recharge. Since we're talking about Enkanomiya, you can think of this as a sort of not so penalizing Bokuso box from the 2.5 event. You can very much explore the areas ahead without it, sure, but it just won't be as rewarding. Say what you want about miHoYo, I certainly don't think they're perfect, but they certainly are learning from their mistakes. All three areas have a boss enemy, and with this it's more about preference. The chasm added what is called the Chasmic Serpent with an appearance resembling that of the Ruin Guards. Paired that with its description, which states that its frontal part allowed it to dig from a distant land, and you can basically confirm this thing came from Khaenri'ah, which will also be important later on in the quest. I personally love the Chasmic Serpent because it actually feels like a threat you should avoid while exploring, given that it's in the middle of your path the first time around. Both the Baptismal Vishaps and the Cryohypostasis don't have this sense of danger, as they're completely isolated from the rest. And also, it looks like the Serpent boss from Risk of Rain 2. On the other hand, it's way, I don't know, not harder, but more annoying than the other two. I don't know, I barely farmed the Vishaps, and I think I've never beaten the Cryohypostasis once, but it makes me wonder if rolling for Yelan is gonna be even worth the hassle. Further in, it's apparent that things start to become less clear and straightforward, both for you and everyone around you. There are people like this group of Fatui members, this Sissy mage, and a guy called Uncle, who have been in here for months, hell, probably even years, without any notice from the world above. They don't know about the incidents that we experienced, the attacks to Liyue Harbor, the rebuild of the Jade Chamber, hell, they don't even know who the Traveler is. which evidently means that after the events of 1.1, the Fatui left at the humble request of the Chiseng and forgot them down here. Sometimes it's easy to forget that despite being the bad guys, the Fatui are just common humans like everyone else. But because of the conditions in Sinashnaya, we're left with basically no choice other than join the military. The group of Fatui soldiers begs for you to not attack them. The friendly mage named Katerina invites you to a drink of firewater at her hideout. Even though they're from the Fatui withholding secret undisclosable intelligence, they're still people with real feelings, emotions, who feel pain, fear, and loneliness. They think they are in the right because, as stated by themselves and the wiki, the reason they came to Leo was to protect the land according to their upper members, and now suddenly they are not wanted here, after being stuck underground for so long. Am I really sympathizing with the villains? After I killed one of their leaders. Anyway, we don't have time for that because Dane's life is waiting for us. Yes, really, you didn't hear me wrong. After what feels like a year? Holy shit, it actually was a year. Dane's life is finally back in the story of Genshin Impact, and spoiler alert, it's actually pretty cool. For how long miHoYo have been hyping Dane's life's next appearance, I think it actually delivered. Good job. I'm not going to spoil anything, I just said spoiler alert, but that was a joke. As this video is solely about the Chasm, so go check out the quest for yourself. I will say though, it's a bit of a heartbreaker mixed in with the usual Dane's life lore dump. Delving even further into the caves, you really start to get into what could be considered uncharted territory for most people. Strange, mystical structures start appearing, resembling less and less a mining operation and becoming more akin to a forgotten, ancient, and non-human city. Further in, after observing countless sights, rune hunters start appearing. New abyssal enemies previously seen only in Enkanomiya become more frequent, as well as a black ooze present so far in the entire area, all culminating in the traveler eventually finding a room in which a nail similar to the one seen in Dragonspine floats still, seemingly corrupted by the same black ooze seen before. I want to mention this because if you studied your Dragonspine lore, you'd know that the Skyfrost nail atop the mountain was sent by Celestia, freezing over the territory controlled by the ancient civilization of South Vindanir. We don't know why this other nail, unofficially dubbed the Chasm nail, is even here, how it got to the underground, or why it was even being held by this weird otherworldly force, but we do know that it's obviously from Celestia given the identical design and a shard similar to the Skyfrost nails, which we found earlier. Were they also trying to nuke another civilization here? Maybe the upside down civilization we saw on our way here? The eras before the Chasm nail do seem pretty similar to the description of Kyenria as mentioned before, but these two certainly are in the same place. However it may be, we released the 5 skills which were binding, protecting, the nail, and the final battle against the Chasmic Serpent begins. Towards the end, a familiar face appears and somehow shoots down the Chasm nail, killing the serpent instantly. Now, after this, rolling for your line is 100% necessary. Please, take my life savings. Please! This way, bad, and gotcha is predatory. Don't partake in it, and I'm known for doing it. Instead, use your money wisely. Don't fall into the trap of desperately for exchange for hard-earned money. Go waste it on something more useful, like a gym or some pizza, or to go buy another game while you wait for some. This isn't really that important to the Chasm specifically, but mostly for the continuation and longevity of the game, as the area drops huge hints of what's to eventually come to Genshin Impact, that being the next Archon-led nation, Sumeru. And no, don't even bother trying to look at Sumeru from the surface. That's not what I mean, and trust me, I've tried. What I mean is that there are subtle hints that Sumeru might be just around the corner and closer to release than we expect. East of the underground mines, the player can locate a small oasis of sorts, reminiscent of another location in the area, but featuring a clear distinction, the roots of a giant tree stretching out and above. These giant roots are unlike anything in the area, and can only really be compared to the roots seen below the Grand Narukami Shrine. This led some to start theorizing on how this could be one of the many ways to directly access or even enter Sumeru for the first time, the moment it comes around in what could be considered version 3.0, which I can definitely agree with. This is not the only hint we have to go off of though. Southeast of these routes lies a sub-area called the Glowing Narrows, in which stays a giant mushroom called Zamaran. Zamaran explains that it took this name from an old friend in Sumeru. I really want the word to actually mean something related to the areas which Sumeru takes inspiration from, but I wasn't able to find anything on that topic. Anyway, not only does Zamaran inherit a name from a friend in Sumeru, it straight up explains that it somehow came from there to the Chasm. further adding to the pile of suspicions and hype about the next nation. And finally, I want to allude to that. I'm afraid I can't directly show it on my channel, but trust me, I am always paying 100% attention to it all. You can look it up yourself on Reddit and Twitter, but I will say, the stuff this community managed to find and collect is absolutely staggering. Of course, all of this is susceptible to aging poorly like milk left in a bowl inside my room. And if it does, you can definitely blame me because I definitely possess 100% control over what miHoYo can or cannot release. And just like that, the main Chasm quest line is finished. Apart from this though, of course there's more to see, like the previously mentioned Day in Life quest line, some 15 or 20 different world quests, most of which reward you with Primogems, areas which are not featured in the main quests, the main event of 2.6, Hues of the Violet Garden, which should still be going on when I release this video, and a lot of Noctilucous Jade to be found, like holy shit. So while you're doing all of this, don't forget to always appreciate the hard work that goes into creating these new areas. I mean, I am definitely no game designer, but I know for a fact that this is hella difficult to make. And as I said before, miHoYo is certainly evolving when it comes to Genshin Impact, and the Chasm is a reflection of that evolution. Therefore, the only expectations I have for these new areas that are to come are for them to only get better and better. Hey, the game's had, and still has, its rocky moments in its lifespan, but that doesn't mean you can't appreciate genuinely good content the moment it comes around. So have fun exploring the Chasm. And if you're already done with it, have fun with the rest of 2.6. Anyways, I wish you all a fantastic rest of your day, watch my other videos, follow me on Twitter, and most importantly of all, take care. This is the end of the video, you can leave now.